Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. Imagine you have a neighbor who is a very nice, normal man. You see him every single day working in his garden, washing his car, and wave hello. But every single night, exactly 1 minute before midnight, he steps inside a small wooden shed in his backyard, locks the door, and completely disappears from the earth. No matter how closely people watch the shed, it is always empty until the next morning. Today, we are going to talk about a very strange real-life puzzle known as the man who vanished every midnight. We will look at how this mystery started in a quiet village, the clever steps his friends took to find out where he went, and the incredible scientific truth that was hidden behind his nightly disappearance. We have a wonderful writer and investigator with us today to tell us this amazing story. Let us begin our conversation now.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here today to talk about this very special case. This story happened in a beautiful small town in the north of England called Green Valley. The year was 1998. The main person in our story was an old man named Arthur. Arthur was 70 years old, and he was a retired engineer who used to work for the railway company. He lived completely alone in a neat brick house with a large backyard. His neighbors all loved him because he was always helpful and kind. He would fix broken bicycles for the neighborhood children and bake delicious bread for his friends. But Arthur had one very strict rule that everyone in the village noticed. He never invited anyone to his house after 9 o'clock in the evening, and his backyard was completely off-limits at night.
A very kind man who has a very strict rule about his house at night. That always makes people curious. How did the neighbors first discover his secret?
The discovery was made by his next-door neighbor, a young man named Tom. Tom was an artist who often stayed up very late at night to paint pictures in his studio. Tom's studio window looked directly over Arthur's backyard. One warm night in the summer, Tom was looking out the window at 11 o'clock. He saw Arthur walk out of his back door. Arthur was carrying a small black leather bag and a bright silver flashlight. He walked very slowly across the grass toward a small wooden shed that sat at the very edge of his property. The shed had no windows and only one heavy wooden door with a large iron lock. Arthur unlocked the door, stepped inside, and closed it behind him. Tom saw the light from the flashlight turn off under the door crack. It was exactly 12 o'clock midnight.
Going to a backyard shed at midnight is a bit unusual, but maybe he just liked to work on his tools late at night. Did Tom see him leave the shed later?
That is exactly what Tom thought at first. He thought Arthur was just working on a hobby, but Tom stayed up painting until 3 o'clock in the morning, and Arthur never came out of the shed. The next morning at 7 o'clock, Tom looked out the window again. He saw Arthur walking out of his regular back door, holding a cup of tea, looking fresh and happy. Tom felt a bit strange about it. The next night, the exact same thing happened. Arthur walked to the shed at midnight and did not return. On the third night, Tom decided to do a small test. He waited until Arthur went into the shed at midnight. Then, Tom walked quietly over the grass to the shed. He knocked on the wood and called Arthur's name, but there was no answer. He looked through the keyhole, but it was completely dark and silent inside.
He knocked and got no response at all. If a man is inside a tiny wooden shed, he should definitely hear a loud knock on the door. What did Tom do next to solve this?
Tom was very worried that Arthur might be sick or having a medical problem inside the shed. The next morning, Tom saw Arthur in the street and asked him if he was feeling okay. Arthur smiled and said he felt wonderful. Tom mentioned that he knocked on the shed door at midnight, but Arthur's smile disappeared. Arthur looked very serious and told Tom that he should never go near the shed at night because it was private and dangerous. This warning made Tom even more curious. He talked to 2 other friends in the neighborhood, a school teacher named Sarah and a local shop owner named George. They decided to watch the shed together from Tom's window on the following weekend to see what Arthur was doing.
Now there were 3 people watching the backyard. A real investigation was starting in the village. What did the group see when the weekend arrived?
On Saturday night, the 3 friends gathered in Tom's studio window. They had a pair of strong binoculars and a video camera. At exactly 11:55, Arthur walked out of his house. He was wearing his usual gray coat and carrying the small black leather bag. He unlocked the shed, walked inside, and locked the door from the inside. George used the binoculars to watch the shed very closely. They waited for an hour. Nothing moved. At 1 o'clock in the morning, George said they should go down and look together. They walked into Arthur's yard and stood around the little wooden building. George brought a very strong magnet tool and a small camera that could slide under the bottom gap of the door.
Using a small camera under the door is a very smart move. It allows them to see inside without breaking the lock or making Arthur angry. What did the camera show them?
They turned on the small camera and slid it carefully under the wooden door. The camera had a little light on the front, so it lit up the floor of the shed. When they looked at the small video screen in George's hand, their jaws dropped in complete surprise. The shed was completely empty. There were some old dusty shelves on the walls with empty paint cans and a few garden tools. There was a small wooden stool in the middle of the room, but Arthur was not there. He was not sitting on the stool, he was not hiding in a corner, and there was no secret door in the walls. The camera could see the whole tiny room. A grown man had entered that room 1 hour ago, and now he was completely gone.
That sounds impossible. A man cannot just turn into smoke and fly away. Did they think there was a hidden hole in the floor like a secret tunnel?
That was their first logical thought. They thought Arthur, being a retired railway engineer, had dug a secret tunnel under the shed that led back into his house or somewhere else in the village. They decided to wait until the morning to see him return. They stayed in the yard, hiding behind some thick bushes. At exactly 6 o'clock in the morning, as the sun was rising, they heard a soft clicking sound from inside the shed. They looked through the bushes. The shed door opened, and Arthur stepped out. He looked happy and relaxed, and he walked back to his house. He did not look dirty or covered in mud like a man who had been crawling through a tunnel.
He just appeared back inside the shed at sunrise. The friends must have been completely baffled. Did they decide to tell the local authorities or investigate further themselves?
They did not want to call the police because Arthur had not committed any crime. He was just a private man doing something strange on his own land. They decided to try one more scientific test. Sarah, the school teacher, brought a digital temperature sensor and a digital clock that could record data. The next night, they quietly attached the small sensors to the outside wall of the shed before Arthur arrived. They wanted to see if the physical environment inside the shed changed when he disappeared. They wanted to know if the heat or the air pressure moved when the clock struck midnight.
That was an excellent scientific approach. Using sensors can tell us a lot about things we cannot see with our eyes. What did the sensor data reveal?
They collected the sensors the next morning and plugged them into Tom's computer. The data showed something incredibly bizarre. At exactly midnight, the temperature right next to the shed dropped by 15 degrees in just one single second. It became freezing cold for about 1 minute, and then the temperature returned to normal. Also, the digital clock they placed near the door lost exactly 60 seconds at midnight. It was like 1 minute of time completely vanished from the physical space around the shed. Sarah was a science teacher, and she knew that only very high energy or a distortion in gravity could cause temperature and time to behave that way.
A drop in temperature and a loss of time. This is starting to sound like some sort of secret technology or physics experiment. Did they finally decide to confront Arthur and ask him for the truth?
They realized they could not solve this mystery alone, and they were worried that Arthur might be in danger from this cold energy. On Sunday afternoon, the three friends walked up to Arthur's front door and knocked. Arthur opened the door and invited them in for tea. Tom sat down and placed the video screen and the computer data charts on the table. He told Arthur that they knew he disappeared every midnight and that they had recorded the temperature drop and the time loss. Tom said they were not angry or spying to be mean, they were just deeply worried about him as his friends. They wanted to know what was happening.
Arthur must have been surprised to see all that data on his table. How did he react when his friends showed him the proof of his midnight disappearances?
Arthur looked at the charts for a long time. Then he sighed, leaned back in his chair, and smiled a very sad smile. He told them that he was actually relieved that someone finally found out because it was a very heavy secret to carry alone for so many years. He told them that he was not using magic, and he was not a ghost. He was participating in a highly secret old government project that started during the Cold War in the year 1974. He had been a top mechanical and electrical engineer for the military before he came to live in their quiet village.
A secret government project from 1974. This is an incredible turn in the story. What was the purpose of this secret project?
Arthur explained that in 1974, the government was studying how to protect important people if a major war happened. A group of scientists discovered that a specific combination of high-frequency radio waves and magnetic fields could create a small, temporary pocket in space where time stood completely still. They called this pocket the sanctuary room. If you entered this pocket, you were completely disconnected from the rest of the world. No bombs, no weapons, and no people could touch you because you were technically living inside a different second of time. Arthur was one of the lead builders who constructed the physical machine that created this pocket.
A sanctuary room where time stands still. That sounds like the ultimate hiding place. But why was Arthur still using it every midnight in 1998, long after the Cold War ended?
That was the sad and beautiful part of his story. Arthur told them that when the project was closed by the government in 1980, they ordered all the big machines to be destroyed. But Arthur had built a small, portable version of the magnetic device for himself. He hid it inside his black leather bag. He explained that his wife, a lovely woman named Mary, had become very sick in 1979. The doctors told him that she had only a few months to live. Arthur could not accept losing her. He decided to use his machine to save her life in the only way he knew how. He put her inside the space pocket where time did not move.
Wow, he put his sick wife inside the time pocket to stop her illness from progressing. That is an incredibly deep and romantic story. Where was the machine located?
The machine was buried deep under the floor of that little wooden shed. Arthur had dug a small concrete chamber 5 feet under the ground before he built the shed on top. Inside that chamber sat the magnetic generator and a comfortable bed where Mary lay sleeping. Because time stood completely still inside that tiny pocket, Mary did not get older, her illness did not spread, and her heart did not stop beating. She was frozen in the exact same second of time from the year 1979. She was perfectly preserved, waiting for a cure to be found.
So she was suspended in time under the shed floor. But why did Arthur have to go there exactly at midnight every single night?
Arthur explained that the small machine was not perfect because it was built with old technology. The magnetic field needed to reset its power balance once every 24 hours to prevent the space pocket from collapsing. The automatic timer on the machine was broken, so someone had to manually press a button and turn a valve exactly at midnight to keep the field stable. If he missed even one single midnight, the pocket would open, time would rush back in, and Mary would pass away instantly because her body would feel the shock of 20 years of illness in 1 second. Arthur had to be there every single night without fail.
That is an immense responsibility. For nearly 20 years, he could never take a vacation, he could never leave the village, and he could never sleep away from his home. He had to be in that shed every midnight to keep his wife alive.
Yes, it was a profound act of love and sacrifice. He told his friends that he was getting old and his hands were beginning to shake. He was terrified that one night he might fall down, get sick, or have a heart attack and fail to press the button. That was why he was relieved that Tom, Sarah, and George had discovered his secret. He looked at them with tears in his eyes and asked them if they would be willing to learn how to operate the machine. He needed someone he could trust to help him protect Mary if he ever became too old or too weak to walk down to the shed himself.
That is a huge thing to ask of your neighbors, to help maintain a secret time machine under a backyard shed. How did Tom, Sarah, and George respond to his request?
They did not hesitate for a single second. They saw the deep love in Arthur's eyes, and they knew he was a good man who had spent his life helping everyone else in the village. They told him that they would absolutely help him. That very evening, Arthur took them down into the shed. He showed them a hidden trapdoor under an old rug. They climbed down a small metal ladder into a bright, clean concrete room. In the center of the room was a large glass capsule surrounded by wires and silver tubes. Inside the capsule, a beautiful young woman with dark hair was lying down, looking like she was having a peaceful dream. It was Mary, looking exactly as she did in 1979.
They actually saw her with their own eyes. It must have been a surreal moment for them to see a person from the past frozen in time right beneath their feet. Did Arthur teach them how to run the machine?
Arthur spent the next 2 weeks training Tom, Sarah, and George. He taught them how to read the pressure gauges, how to check the battery levels, and how to turn the manual valve exactly when the clock hit 11:59. They created a special calendar schedule. Every week, one of the friends would go to Arthur's house at night to stand watch with him and make sure the reset happened perfectly. This team of friends became the secret protectors of the Midnight Sanctuary. Because of their help, Arthur was finally able to rest easy at night, knowing that his beloved Mary was safe no matter what happened to his own health.
It is a wonderful story of human connection and community. They came together to support an old friend's secret dream. Did they ever manage to find a cure for Mary's illness as medical science improved over the years?
That is the most inspiring part of the conclusion. In the year 2005, 7 years after the friends started helping, Sarah found an article in a medical journal. A new hospital in London had developed a successful treatment for the exact type of illness that Mary had. It was a medicine that did not exist in 1979. Sarah showed the article to Arthur. The old man cried tears of joy. They decided it was finally time to bring Mary back into the modern world. They made an appointment with the specialized doctors in London and prepared to open the time pocket for the very last time.
Bringing a person out of a 26-year time sleep must have been very risky. How did they manage to do it safely without harming her?
They did it very carefully on a quiet morning in October. Tom and George helped Arthur adjust the controls to slowly reduce the magnetic field over a period of 4 hours. They wanted time to flow back into the capsule gradually, like a warm bath, rather than all at once. As the gauges reached 0, the glass capsule opened with a soft hiss of air. Mary slowly opened her eyes and blinked at the bright lights. She looked at Arthur and smiled. To her mind, she had just fallen asleep the night before. She did not know that 26 years had passed, but she saw that her husband had become an old man with white hair.
That must have been a very emotional reunion. She went to sleep with a young husband and woke up with an old man, but his love was exactly the same. Did the medicine work for her?
They took Mary to the hospital in London using a private ambulance. The doctors treated her with the new medicine over the course of 3 months. Because her illness had not progressed at all during her time in the capsule, the medicine worked perfectly. She was completely cured. Mary returned to the village of Green Valley as a healthy woman. She had to learn a lot about the modern world, like mobile phones, computers, and how the village had changed, but she had Arthur by her side to guide her every step of the way. They had a second chance at life together.
That is a truly beautiful happy ending. What happened to the secret machine under the shed after Mary was cured? Did they destroy it or tell the public?
Arthur and his friends decided that the machine had served its purpose, and it was too dangerous to leave intact. They dismantled the wires, broke down the magnetic generator, and filled the concrete chamber under the shed with solid gravel and soil. They wanted to make sure nobody could ever use it for bad reasons or cause an accident with time. Arthur lived for another 10 happy years with Mary before he passed away peacefully at the age of 87. Mary is still alive today, living in that same brick house, and she remains close friends with Tom, Sarah, and George, the 3 neighbors who saved her life by keeping a midnight secret.
This story is a beautiful reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary mysteries are hidden behind the most ordinary doors. It shows us that technology can be a wonderful tool when it is guided by love and human kindness. Why do you think Arthur's story touches so many people who hear it?
I think it touches us because it combines our fascination with science fiction and our deep desire for true connection. We all want to believe that love can defeat time and illness. Arthur did not use his brilliant engineering skills to make money or become famous. He used his knowledge to protect the person he cared about most in the world, and his neighbors did not betray his trust or sell his story to newspapers. They came together as a true community to help him carry his burden. It is a story that shows the very best side of human nature, and it reminds us to look out for our own neighbors because everyone has a hidden story.
That is a very wonderful thought to leave with our audience. We should always look at the people around us with empathy and open hearts. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing this deeply moving and incredible case with us. Your storytelling made the entire history so clear and touching to listen to.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you for having me on your show, and I hope your listeners enjoyed hearing how the mystery of the man who vanished every midnight was finally solved through friendship and love. Have a beautiful and peaceful week, everyone.
What an amazing mystery to think about. To summarize the key takeaways from our discussion today, we explored the incredible story of Arthur, a retired engineer who appeared to vanish from his backyard shed every midnight. We learned how his friends used cameras and temperature sensors to discover a secret underground chamber where a Cold War time machine was keeping Arthur's sick wife, Mary, frozen in time to save her life. We saw how a dedicated community of neighbors came together to help Arthur run the machine until modern medicine could find a cure, leading to a wonderful happy ending for the family. This story reminds us that love, dedication, and true friendship are the most powerful forces in our world. Thank you again to our expert guest, and thank you to all our listeners for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in the next episode.